Hey everyone, welcome to another Topics with Tim podcast. I'm your host, Tim Giorso. I'm joined by the guest that you've all been waiting for, Mr. Shahin. Shahin, how are you feeling today?
Doing well, man. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. How is life without sports?
Oh, man, it's such a drag. This is usually a good time of year.
Oh, it's
Got
phenomenal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have the NBA, almost finishing up their season. Usually around this time, we got the fantasy basketball going on. You have NFL free agency. Thank Allah that NFL free agency is still going on. I'm so glad.
For real, man.
It's
There's not a lot of
yeah.
news.
But yeah, and then you had club football. I'm really big
Mm.
into watching European soccer. So
That's good to
everything's
know.
gone.
We will definitely do future pods on that because me and Armin talked a little bit about soccer on our last pod, and I
Mm.
did not know that you were a soccer guy, so that is good to know for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sports nut, man. I'm into tennis, boxing,
Hockey?
MMA, hockey. Actually, hockey is the one sport I haven't really gotten into that much. But if I were to pick another sport to watch, that would be the one. Yeah, not baseball, but hockey.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you didn't mention baseball on your list, did you?
No, I didn't. Yeah, so
Baseball is the worst.
European football, American football, basketball, golf, tennis, boxing, MMA. Yeah, I think
Jack
that's
of all
about it.
trades. Have you ever tried playing fantasy baseball?
No, but I heard it's actually pretty fun. There's a lot of stats to have to do with baseball, so it's fun for statisticians and people to play fantasy, right?
I played it a couple times and I really enjoyed it, but it always interfered because once basketball and football season started, I just stopped checking. There's just too much.
Yeah, what is the regular season? 162 games? Oh
162
gosh,
games.
oh gosh,
It's long.
that's a grind, man.
I think that was
I
always the
respect it.
sport that I was never good at. I was never good at playing either. Like that was my worst sport by far. Just awful. Like if you see me play sports, you'd be like, yeah, Tim's good at most sports. That was the one sport I was literally like laughed off the field at. I was that bad.
Oh wow, yeah, I
Which
wouldn't. Yeah, I mean,
I know,
I
right?
mean,
Like I'm usually like I'm known for being like, hey, the sports, I'm really good at sports, but literally, I have a traumatic experience where my team was like super good. I was a sub all year long, so we're playing in this championship game, and the coach for some reason decides to put me at second base, and I'm like, I don't even play all year. I'm a sub. I come in like the sixth inning and play outfield, and you're putting me at second base, starting me in the championship game. Like this guy's nuts. Like what are you doing? And of course, I make
you
like
got
three
confidence in
errors.
you.
I make three errors. Literally, my team's yelling at me, like,
Oh
"What are you
man.
doing? Like, you idiot!" Like I've never been like, "Oh my gosh!" People are literally yelling at me because I'm just awful. And I struck out three times swinging, and it was the worst experience of my life. I never played another game of baseball again, ever. uh,
Hey man, the coach probably had confidence in you, and it didn't work out. But hey, yeah, I mean, I've watched you. I've played basketball with you. I thought, yeah, you're a pretty athletic dude. You've got some skill, and I think that would translate to most sports, I guess, except baseball, I guess.
except baseball, man. Do you have a sport that you're like, what's your best sport playing wise?
I mean, I'm not very good at sports, but I would say basketball. I grew up playing basketball a lot. I feel like I have a pretty good handle. My shooting has always been all over the place. So, but
Same.
yeah, when I used to play basketball, often it was the shooting was good enough where I could be a decent player. But I mean, if I went to go shoot around right now, I'd probably suck ass. Wait,
Hey,
can I cuss on this?
uh, it's fine. Just keep to a minimum as you can, but I don't mind.
Oh, okay.
I don't mind the
Okay.
occasional, in the moment.
No F bombs.
All
No
good.
F bombs.
Just try not to. I can put explicit on it if need be.
Okay. Okay. And
um,
it's going to be hard
but
for me. I'm just letting you know.
I appreciate you letting me know.
I,
Just
I
do the best you can. I'm not gonna be
okay.
on you too hard.
I curse like a sailor, so I'm gonna actually. I might pause before I speak, so I don't rush headfirst into some expletives. I'm gonna
I
I'm gonna
I
calm
appreciate
down.
that. The viewers do as well. So I've been asking everybody this that I've had on. Who's your NBA player comparison? Like, what game do you have?
Oh wow. Well, I said this a while ago with some friends, and it kind of stuck, and they liked using it because I don't know. I think maybe for the physical appearance, but also a little bit because of the style. I like to pass and facilitate. Boris Diaw. Uh,
Ooh,
so
okay.
it's kind of like a power forward. Who could play the 3-4. Who I don't think Boris played the 3 actually, but mostly the 4. He could kind of like stretch the floor a little bit, but also be a secondary ball handler. Yeah, I could see
Ooh, dude,
myself doing
Boris
that.
Dia was just that kind of jack of all trades guy.
Yeah, I like to. I mean, I'm not a great passer, but I do like to pass, and I think I'm okay at it. So I like to set people up.
I like that, Boris Dia. My other question would be that I've been asking everyone as well is what kind of got you first interested in basketball? Where did that start? How did you get introduced to fantasy sports as well?
Um, well, first with basketball, I mean, growing up, I was a Kings fan. Um, I think I really got into them when I think the player that really got me into basketball was Jason Williams,
Hmm.
White Chocolate. I just his skill and handle of the ball. It was something where I'd go, I'd wake up, go to school, go back home, watch the Kings, go back to school, and talk about Jason Williams. Like did you guys see what Jason Williams did last night? Like he was one of my favorite players growing up, and he really got me interested in the Kings, and then the Lakers tore my heart out.
Oh man. Oh
Yeah.
gosh. I feel like that's a worse topic than the coronavirus. The two games.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
They're pretty even for just
it's
like what
pretty even.
happens
Yeah.
emotionally when you think of either of those things.
The 2002 Western Conference Finals or coronavirus. Yeah, it's pretty close, man.
It's rare. It's rare that I've like cried over sports. Like there's been occasional moments, a couple like when the Patriots won their last Super Bowl, I teared up a little bit, and different moments where I've cried. But I've never like me and my brother literally bawled our eyes out after that whole O2 thing. Like we were so distraught. I can't remember being so emotional
Oh, I was
ever.
screaming all over the house. I went out I went outside and ran around my neighborhood like like I was so infuriated. Like it was awful. It was one of the worst sports moments ever for for any professional sport. I mean, thinking about like Tim Donaghy being implicated in what he was, and I mean the level of corruption in a major sport in that kind of event in the Western Conference Finals, and we would have easily beat the Nets in the next series.
Oh yeah.
That's what also I think that's what stings a lot is that it's not like we would have okay if you beat the Lakers you would have had a chance. No, we would have trounced the Nets.
Hmm.
By most metrics, I think the Kings were the best team in the league that year, and so we would have handled the Nets in 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The East was garbage that year. Let's be honest.
Mm,
And whoever was gonna, that was essentially the real finals. Was the Kings Lakers? That was the two best
absolutely.
teams, and we got absolutely hosed
Oh
completely.
yeah. How many free throws did the Lakers have?
Gosh, what
Uh,
27 wasn't it?
27, and then we had what,
Crazy.
two, or do we have
Oh
zero?
my
Two, one.
god! I think it had maybe two. We
Scott
had
Pollard.
something, but
Yeah,
it
I mean,
was
all of our big men were fouled out. We're down to like Lawrence Funderburg, and Funderburg had like 5 fouls. I mean, everyone had 5 or 6 fouls. It was insane. Tap fouls too on Shaq. On Shaq.
I know the guy who usually doesn't get calls because he's getting just beat up so much that
Right.
people let him take the contact. But yeah, of course, they had to do
Yeah.
what they had to do to try to get ratings up. Or I never forgave David Stern. I always hated him just with every
Mhm.
ounce of my being. However, I did forgive him when he blocked the relocation of the Kings to Seattle. That was kind of a
Yeah.
moment of, okay, you
That was good.
redeemed yourself. You did something awful, but keeping the Kings in Sacramento, okay, I can forgive
I
you.
agree.
You've sort of you've redeemed yourself.
You know what he also did to redeem himself in my eyes. That is a good point. The Seattle thing was huge, but also him blocking the move for Chris Paul to the Lakers was really funny to me.
Oh my gosh, yes. I
I
forgot about
thought
that.
I found that really amusing. So I was like, all right, well, at least he screwed over the Lakers. He's consistent.
How pissed must like Chris Paul be? Like, still doesn't have a title. It's probably like, God dang it.
I
Maybe if I
consider
got
Chris
traded to the
Paul.
Lakers.
Yeah, I consider him one of the greatest players ever and one of the best point guards of all time. So for him not to get a ring or even really get close to a ring. I mean, really, his best chance was Rockets Dubs a few years ago.
Yeah, yeah. He doesn't pull his hammy. I think that they would have won.
Yep.
Like, which is crazy. I never thought anyone would beat that Warriors team, but he doesn't pull that hammy. They win that series. I think
Absolutely.
there's just a mental edge that he gives teams, and as soon as he was gone, you knew it was over because he
Yeah.
just provides this mental edge that no one else can provide, and you just knew
What's,
that was it. That was their chance.
What's
And
crazy is they still had to miss, I don't know what, 27 threes in a row or something in,
oh my
in the
gosh,
second
we
half.
watched that game together, and we were just
We
like,
did. Wingstop.
so many missed 3-pointers. Which I mean, it's kind of their system. You kind of live or die by the three. So they died by the three.
It was statistically almost like really, really improbable for them to miss that many threes in a row, though. Like it was pretty crazy. It was a statistical phenomenon almost. It was just they missed so many threes. If they nail like one or two of them, they probably win the game.
Yeah, the fact that it was still close, even with that
Right.
level of kind of anomaly in the stats, was pretty incredible. And if Chris Paul was there, you put Chris Paul in the mix, it's over. I mean, Kevin Durant shrunk those last few games under the pressure. He was playing terrible, especially in the fourth quarter. So it was all hands on deck for the Rockets. But yeah, the Chris Paul injury, plus just like the random shooting slump from everyone on the team. You just look up at the fantasy gods and go, why, the basketball gods, I should say. So we know that some of you listening right now would love me and Shahin to talk about some of the trades that went down, and both of us talked about it. We thought it'd be a good idea we thought it'd make a good podcast material. So Shahin, tell me, I don't know if is there a trade in particular you wanted to talk about? Did you think most of the trades were okay? Did you think all of them sucked? Give me the ones that were the most controversial for you and how you would have dealt with them?
Well, the one that was vetoed for sure. I to be honest, my memory is a little hazy.
There was two
Jokic.
trades were vetoed. There was the
Okay.
initial Jarrett Allen for Paul Millsap trade, which was
Okay.
vetoed, and then there was the Jokic for Jonas and I'm blanking on his name, John Morant trade.
Okay. Now, see, that one is the one I had a problem with, especially weighed against a trade that was allowed. I believe it was I think it was Embiid for Westbrook and someone else, or Embiid and someone for
It
Westbrook and
was
someone.
Aaron Gordon, Westbrook for Embiid and Eric Gordon, I want to say. I'm pretty sure that's right.
Okay.
So Aaron Gordon and Westbrook for Embiid and Eric Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
Gordon's getting swapped.
Right. So at the time that trade was made, Westbrook was barely a top 100 player because the format of our league was so focused on field goal percentage. What you had 2 or 3 categories based on field goal percentage, right?
You had field goal percentage, adjusted field goal percentage, and then free throw percentage was the only other percentage one.
Okay. So you had two categories that were based on field goal percentage, and Westbrook shooting over the first couple months was atrocious and actually kept his value pretty low. Now, I'm not saying that trade should have been vetoed by any means. The thing is, I think every trade should be allowed through, and you should just let owners play. Let them make their decisions. But like weighed against the other trade that was vetoed, I'm not sure. Like that's where the discrepancy for me came in, because if you looked at the rankings at the time, Valanciunas was a top 30 player because he was scoring at such a high clip with his field goal percentage. So it was just odd. There was a bigger gap between Embiid and Westbrook at the time in terms of their player value through the first couple months of the season than there was between Valanciunas, Morant, and Jokic. So that was my argument. But I don't even remember. It's been a while, and all of this stuff going on. Like, so why was it vetoed?
I mean, I can't speak for the trade committee and what their specific reasons were. I can only speak to what my opinion was on it. I didn't vote.
Committee.
I just
can we expose the trade committee? Who are these people?
So we've actually been doing the trade committee for quite some time, Mr. Shaheen. It's been kind of a league staple for a while.
I just want you to say it.
No, that's fine. It's something we implemented because we experienced in our first few years, we didn't always have a lot of committed owners. We usually would get a couple of fringe people because we want the rosters to be deeper. No one likes to play in like 8 or 10 team. It's not as fun, not as deep. So we'd have fringe guys, and we found that when we had fringe players who maybe weren't as into it, as dedicated as we were, we had some trades happen that were pretty bad. Like, a guy in last place towards the end of the year trading away his, a top 20 player for maybe a couple like, average players, or we had stuff like that happen where we were all like, what? Like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, we didn't even have the consolation at that point in play. So what is this last place person even trying to do? And so we ran into a lot of issues with that. And so that's when we established having a committee where, 3 people voted in by the league if, something was questionable. And we used to do all trades would be voted on, but then we found that, people have day jobs and are doing other things, so they couldn't always have time to look at every trade. So me and Blake kind of were like, all right, if both of us agree that it's good, then we'll let it through. If both of us are kind of like, well, we even have a slight question about it, we'll send it to the committee for their review. So that way they didn't have to review every single trade. They would just review a couple and kind of ease their load and ease their burden, but also have kind of a system where we could sort of protect against maybe some of our fringe owners. Not saying you guys, like, I'm happy with you guys. I feel like we have a solid enough core of people now where I'm kind of even saying we should let almost all trades through. Like, I'm typically the one now that's pushing to put stuff through. However, I would still have vetoed that Jokic trade, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But for the most part, I want almost all trades to go through. And even if that trade had gone through, I would have been okay. Like, I would have been like, okay, that's fine. Whatever. It's not the end of the world.
Okay.
Because I feel like we have good enough owners now. We shouldn't be as worried about it. But that's kind of, I guess, the history of, if you're wanting to know how it came to be, it's we kind of wanted to protect the people who were really dedicated from maybe the people on the fringe who were kind of like, oh yeah, sure, what the heck, I got nothing to lose, I'll just do this random trade. And then, like, yikes, that's a top 20 player going to a team going to the playoffs, and that can really change a lot of things for the people that are putting it. So we found that it's worked for us. We've enjoyed it. Not every person that's been in our league has enjoyed it. You're not the first one to be upset. We've had owners that have decided, like, hey, we don't want to be in the league because we don't like that. And then we're like, okay, that's fine. Like, we can't,
I don't have a problem with the concept. And I think it's a good idea. I mean, for the reasons you outlined, it's a good idea to have a trade committee, because the commissioners can't always be, present 24/7, and it's good to have a second opinion, right? But I think if you just said that you feel good about the group of owners you have now, I would suggest maybe a rolling committee every year. Different people in the committee. That way, you're more impartial. You're not playing favorites. Not that I'm saying you are, but that kind of thing. If it was a rolling committee where it's a different ownership every year in the committee, then I would feel good about the long-term stability of the league and how you're doing things. Just to be like trying to be objective and stuff. So that, and also Um,
Especially, I actually really like that idea. I had not heard that suggested before. So I definitely be thinking
yeah,
about
I
that. I think it's a
mean,
good idea.
I'm a commissioner of gosh, I've lost count how many leagues I'm a commissioner of right now, but most of them are dynasty football leagues, and this is a lot of these issues are things that I have to deal with as well. So
Mm.
I totally understand where you're coming from and the safeguards that you've put in to protect your league. I will say this. Perhaps, um, and I don't know if the dude is going to be listening to this pod, and I hate to expose him like this, but maybe we should get Scotty out of the league, man. Because if you're not going to let the man trade, if you're not going to let him trade, you're going to babysit every decision he makes. You got to take him out. You want to give owners full reign and autonomy over their moves. You don't want to break down every single move they make. So if the guy can't even trade anymore with like Jared Allen and Paul Millsap, okay, most people agree that's a bad trade. But then, any trade that dude makes now is just like, no, veto. We can't do that to him. We can't do that to someone. So if you're not going to give full autonomy to Scotty or whoever else, then probably not the league for them. So that would be my other suggestion.
Hmm. Well said. Well said. I've had similar thoughts too, wondering the same thing. Scott, if you are listening, we'd love to. Maybe I'll get you on. You can give your side of your trades.
Oh
'Cause you
gosh.
actually ended up winning a decent amount of them. I remember I did. I don't know if you heard I did a podcast where I broke down all the trades and kind of picked my winners losers, and he won almost all of them.
Yeah, dude.
Other than
I
I
was
still thought
saying.
he lost the Jokic one, or I mean that trade didn't really happen, so there was no winner loser.
Oh man.
But even if he did, I would have said I thought he still would have lost, but it wouldn't have, not by much, not by
We
much.
were all clowning him during the season, during the draft, about how the Paul Millsap pick was probably the most outrageous reach. But Paul Millsap actually played pretty well this season. I guess until the end where he started getting injured, and missing games. But the first half of the year, I think he did pretty well. And I don't know, man. I mean, I just feel like it's I don't know. It's just unfair to keep needling the guy's moves all the time, and I feel kind of bad for him. I feel like he should be given freedom to do the moves he wants to make.
Hmm. Well said. Now, you being a commissioner in other leagues, have you run into similar problems? What has your experience like being a commissioner for these dynasties? I know it's dynasties works a little different, and I don't know like what level of ownership you have where everyone's. I mean, because usually if you're doing dynasty, you're pretty diehard. Not a lot of average Joes are doing dynasty leagues, and I love dynasty leagues,
Mhm.
by the way. They're amazing. Uh, how have you had similar issues where you've had trades where you're like, oh God, this is such a terrible trade? And have you let it through? Like, what has your kind of solution as a commissioner been? And do you as commissioner, you kind of you have make all the decisions? Do you do voting? I'm just curious on some of your how you run things in your leagues.
There are some leagues that I have that are more long running than others. So they've had they've gone through 4 or 5 years, and there are a lot of the owners in the league have been around for a while. So they trust my decision making. They know that I'm pretty knowledgeable when it comes to football and player value. So if I veto a trade, it's very rare, and it has to be done. Um, with everyone kind of shocked by the disparaging player value, right? Right, the difference in player value. So um, it have to be shocking. I don't veto many trades. I really don't. I let most of them through. I want to give people respect, and I don't want to like ask them, like, why did you make this trade, and then have to debate them. Um, but I mean, there are some trades that I've had to veto over the years that are just so outrageous that you
Hmm.
have no choice, because if you're the commissioner of the league, you have to think about the integrity of the league. If a trade is made and it doesn't help the team at all, and it stacks another team, and it's a dynasty league, so you're going to have to be dealing with
Hmm.
these teams for years, you have to veto it, because if you leave it as is, you're gonna be suffering the ramifications for years to come. Like you can't trade for example, I mean, I saw Zeke get traded for Philip Lindsay in a second rounder.
Oof. Someone's a really
And
big Philip Lindsay believer.
guess what, man? Guess what? I allowed that trade.
Oh, you did.
I
Wow.
did. I
Okay.
allowed that trade, and see, that's the thing. I don't want to veto everything. It would have to take something even more shocking than that to veto. And gosh, I can't recall. It's been a while. I mean, I haven't vetoed a trade in a while. I mean, I feel like I do a good job of screening owners. You know, I
Hmm.
don't want to bring in noobs. No offense to people
Yeah.
who are kind of novices at dynasty football, but I want people to have an understanding of football, and um, they I could just let them do their thing and let them be on their own. You know, I don't have to police them. I don't want to do that as a commissioner. But I mean, I'm also a commissioner of redraft leagues every year too. I have a redraft league that I do every year on Yahoo, called Champions League, and it's a redraft league of only former champions. Like, you have to show a receipt of winning the
Ooh.
league the year before, winning a redraft league a year before, and you gain entry into this 12-team league. It's usually like $50 to $100 buy-in
So it's
per
not. It's
draft.
not. If you've won one in the past, you had to have won one the previous year to get in.
Previous year Champions League, yeah.
Mm.
Um, that's the only way you get in, and yeah, I mean, so but most of my leagues are dynasty leagues, and I'll always throw in a few redraft leagues to do every year. But yeah, man, it's fun. I want to get you in some of my leagues, man. I could tell you have an interest in dynasty football. Uh,
Dynasty is killer, man. It blows redraft out of the water, in my opinion.
oh, for sure. I mean, when uh, yeah, this is a good segue to your prior question about how I got into fantasy. But with Danny Tomlinson, he was just scoring so many touchdowns in like '05. I was like, maybe I should get into this fantasy thing. And so
Mm.
I remember drafting him in the first round and winning the league because he had like 30 touchdowns, and I was like, this is fun.
Ooh, was that his record-breaking year? Did you have him during
I think
the?
so. Yeah, I think that was the first year I
Ooh.
played. I think that was '05 or '06, and he went off and he had like 30 touchdowns. He was like, he was that era's Christian McCaffrey.
Mm.
Number one overall pick and all that. So um, I think I actually had him slipping a little bit and I picked him up like, I don't know, third or fourth or something. I don't remember. It was a long time. It was 15 years ago. So
Yeah.
uh, but I've been playing ever since then and just slowly accruing more and more leagues every year. And now I'm a straight up addict, man. I mean, I've cut down a lot of leagues, dynasty leagues, in the past year, but I've just kept the ones that I like, and I'm only doing one startup, uh, which is it's pretty funny actually. Well, I don't know if I could. All right, I'll try to be PC. It's called Porno Dino.
Cool.
Every owner picks their favorite porn star as their team, and then we're gonna do a startup auction draft, and it will be dynasty football, and
Oh
it'll be
man,
well,
that's pretty funny. I can't lie.
yeah, yeah. It's gonna be good. I've already got a good group of guys. It needs 6 more owners actually. So if you're interested in that, if you're a porn addict, just let us know. Yeah, I'm just
I'm,
kidding. You don't have
I'm
to be
recovering.
recovering. Hey, we could use you. It doesn't matter. No, you don't have to be into porn. I mean, actually, no, that is a requirement.
I
You
feel
do
like that's
have
kind
to.
of a requirement.
It is. You have to give a favorite porn star, and that is your team. So, like right now, mine is Ray Little Black. I don't know if you know who that is, but if you do, then
Does it have to
kudos
be
to
a male porn star?
No, no. I mean, you could pick a male porn star. No one has done that yet, though. Everyone's picked their favorite woman that they like to watch. So, uh,
I would love to. I probably can't.
you just
Fortunately, I won't be able to be in that league. But if there's another
why
one
not?
that you have, we don't want to get into that. But if you have another league, I've been itching to be. I almost got into a friend of mine's dynasty football league, and he was like, "Yeah, you're almost." But then his buddies were like, "No, we don't want people from our high school or something." So I was like, "Dang it,
What?
I've been missing out on chance to get into dynasty football." So if you got one, that's not that league, then I'm in. Count me in.
I've got 2 dispersal drafts left, and
What's a
I'm trying.
dispersal draft?
Okay, so that's when. Well, every year there you experience some turnover, right? In a dynasty league, there are owners who leave. Life happens. They get a new job or whatever. They have to leave. So you have all these open spots, and you could either fill the teams in one of 2 ways. You could either advertise the open team as an orphan and have people pick it up, claim the team, and then they take that team as it is with its players and picks and just move forward with that build. Or what you could do is you could take, let's say you have 4 open teams in a 12-team league. You need 4 owners. You could throw all 4 of those players and picks into a pool called a dispersal pool, and you could have those 4 owners draft new teams with that pool of assets. That's called a dispersal draft. So if that is usually done where when there are more than 2 teams open in a league. So if it's only like a few teams, then I'll be like, okay, I'll advertise it as an orphan. We don't have to do a dispersal draft. You could just come in and pick this team if you want. If it's more than 2 teams, then I hold if it's 3 or more teams, then I hold a dispersal draft where everyone redrafts a new team basically from that pool of available players. And people like doing that. They don't want to
Yeah.
they don't want to look at a dude's has-been roster and be like, okay, yeah, these are a bunch of guys I don't like anymore.
Yeah. No.
They like to be able to draft their team.
Okay, 100%. That sounds cool. I like that idea. It makes a lot of sense too. Just give people a little bit more freedom, a little bit more of a chance to get a better team than just picking up somebody's leftover garbage that they left. So
yeah, absolutely.
I totally feel that.
I think a big thing, a big rule about dynasty football too is making sure people pay for future picks, and that's something I didn't do early on when I was a commissioner about 10 years ago. I would kind of let people just trade future picks willy-nilly, like they were candy, and they would say, yeah, oh yeah, I'll pay for it and come next year, and then they dip. So they basically treat their team as if it was a redraft team, and then shop all of their future assets, like let's say their 2020 draft picks, if it was 2019, right? And they shop all of them for vets. They load up. They treat it like a redraft, and then if they didn't win, they dip. They'd leave. And that's no way to do a dynasty league, because then you're leaving.
That's like evil. That's what that is.
Yeah,
It's awful.
yeah, exactly. Because you leave the next guy to look at your team and go, oh, wow, I don't have any picks and I have nothing to deal with. I can't do anything. So I ask them to pay in advance if they're going to trade future picks, so that if they do leave, the next owner gets a free buy-in. Comes in and gets to do what he wants. And I always ask for them, if you do have a free buy-in, you have to pay in advance the next year just to show some commitment. So had to do that for a few leagues this year where the buy-in was free because the prior owner traded future picks. And then I asked the new owners to pay for 2021 so they could show some commitment. Yeah. So far, so good. I have one
a great
league.
system. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, man. I have one league on myfantasyleague.com. I think it's the best site for dynasty football, and another which is on a really simple platform called Flea Flicker. So those are 2 different dynasty leagues. It's a Lord of the Rings league.
Oh,
league
get me in on that one, dude. I'm a Lord of the Rings fanatic.
Are you? Okay, there you go, man. You're in. You're in.
Yes, let's go, dude. Are we naming our teams after our favorite characters or something, or what? Because Legolas is my jam.
Well, actually, you're going to have to pick from locations. So it's going to be like Erebor, Woodland Realm, Gondor, Mordor, Isengard, stuff like. It's very nerdy, bro. And
dude, I'm all about it. That's my favorite, probably my favorite movies of all time. Lord of the Rings by far. Love it.
God, okay, that's great, man. I'm glad that I didn't even mention the other league, which I think is more fun. But that's good. That's good. I want you in this Lord of the Rings one. I actually just posted on RotoWorld League Finder today, looking for owners for it. So if we could get you in, then we only need 6 more, and we're good. And I just started finding people,
Sick.
so
Now,
found 2
have
people
you had
today.
this league for a while, or did you like I'm just going to start a Lord of the Rings league?
This league was on MFL before, and okay, well, this is kind of a funny story. Actually, I don't think I can mention it here. Never mind.
Oh,
Let's
oh. All right, off the
let's
record.
let's
Remind me to ask you
let's
about it
just
off when we go
yeah,
off.
for sure, for sure. Let's just say the commissioner didn't like me very much, and so he kicked me out. And so I had to take the league and its existing structure and all of its teams and swap it into Flea Flicker because I really liked the league and the and the bylaws. So the unique thing about this league is you're not only just playing but a fantasy football league, but you there are these things that you play for called power. You're trying to, like, the forces of good and evil try to accrue as much power as they can throughout the season. And at the end of the season, all the teams on the good side or the evil side get some cash prizes or draft prizes based on how much power they got. It's pretty cool, man. I'm telling you, I'll send you the Constitution. It's really nerdy. You're gonna love it. I think if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, this is for you.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, man. It's gonna be good. It's good stuff. I'm glad to get you in.
Please send me the Constitution on that one. I'd love to read that.
For
That's
sure.
hilarious.
It's only a $20 buy-in every year, so no big
Oh,
deal. We
easy,
usually,
easy.
yeah.
Very cool. Well, that's cool. I honestly I knew that you were a commissioner of some leagues, but I didn't realize you were a commissioner of that many. How many leagues would you say you commission?
I'm gonna say a dozen at least.
Man,
Yeah.
I feel like that's got to be like a full-time job.
No, I mean it's. I have a lot of people that help me out. So and honestly, I think if you do a good job running the league in its first few years, it kind of just runs itself. You have bylaws for every league. Most league disputes and issues are settled through that document, and I really only step in when it's something outside of what the document can solve. So, I mean, everyone is pretty experienced. There really aren't that many things a commissioner has to do once you have a good group of owners.
True.
The
True.
biggest issues are always trades,
Yep.
always trades.
Yep.
Or tanking. Tanking is the
Ooh,
big
yeah.
thing in dynasty leagues. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes. We've had
I
issues with that in my dynasty basketball where
mhm.
like I was trying to convince the owner to like not have quite as high incentives for, kind of like in the NBA. NBA has the same problem, right? Like their incentives are so high to tank. You get teams tanking. It works the same way in dynasty, right? Hey, I want a first round pick. I'll just bench all my guy. But it's like so different in fantasy because it's like, dude, like at least in the NBA, you have to sort of field a team, but I
Mhm.
don't want to play a guy and beat him 7-0 and just be like, oh, just bored that week because I don't have to try because this person, you know what I mean? It's like a different, like,
Yeah,
why do you tank
absolutely.
in fan? I mean, I get it, but I'm like, yeah, I feel like you got to legislate.
Yeah,
How do
there are.
you deal with tanking teams in your leagues? Is it set up like the NBA and the NFL where, number one, the worst person gets number one pick? Is it more of a lottery style? Like, how are your leagues set up and how do you deal with tanking?
So early on, as when I was a commissioner, I would set it up like most normal leagues, reverse order of standing, right? So the regular season for the NFL is weeks 1 through 13, and then the playoffs usually start 14, 15, 16, right? So you look at the standings after week 13, and then you jot down the draft order for next year. And then, if it's a 12-team league, the non-playoff teams you jot down in reverse order of standing, and then you wait to see the playoffs bear out, and then you get spots 7 to 12. Now the problem with that is, as you said, people can tank, people could bench their star players, and they could just basically get buy themselves a higher pick just by losing games. Now, what you could do to mitigate that, and I think this is really the best thing, is there are some sites that utilize potential points, and I think this is a huge boon for anti-taking provisions in dynasty leagues. So basically, whether you set the lineup or not, it will take your optimal score every week. So you could tank all you want. You could bench every player on your team. It will still take the optimum score for that week. And after 13 weeks, I will pick the weakest team in the league because that's what it shows, and I'll give them the number 1 pick next year. And I'll do that in reverse order of potential points. That way you cannot tank. It's impossible. The only way you can tank is the only way that I allow someone to tank, which is trading your elite and best assets for youth and draft picks. And that's the way you do a rebuild, right? If you want to transition from, if you're not sure if you're a contender and you've got some, high-end assets, but your team is not very good, you're not going to make the playoffs, whatever. You sell Mike Evans and Ezekiel Elliott for, Marquise Brown and 2 firsts or whatever. If you do trades like that, that is technically tanking, but that's doing it the right way. It's doing it the way, the NFL would do it or the NBA, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're trading away your best players for, some potential draft picks, stuff like that. You could do that. But I just hate people who don't set lineups, man. It's the worst thing in the world. That's the one thing I ask everyone in my leagues to do. Just set your lineup. Just it's not that hard. And I everyone in my leagues knows I'm a hard ass about lineups. So even if I do use potential points, I want everyone to give their best competitive spirit every week. At least show that you're trying to win each and every week, even if you suck. Give it a shot. You never know what could happen, especially in a volatile sport like football.
Football, yeah, super volatile.
Yeah, so I try to do anything I can between potential points. I will penalize people. I'll take away draft picks if it's severe. I will even remove you from my league if you are not setting lineups. If you're tanking, I know I remember there were 2 friends of mine, or not mine. There were 2 friends in the league, and they just kept trading between each other. And it was pretty obvious that, and that was I think one of the only few moments of collusion that I've had to kick someone out of. That happened years ago, but yeah, they just kept trading to each other. As soon as one guy realized he wasn't going to make the playoffs, he just traded all of his best players to his friend.
Ugh, disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do that. So I kicked them both out, and I didn't refund them either. I was pissed.
Good. I feel everything you're saying. I'm because I haven't commissioned quite as many leagues as you, but I've usually every year I'm a commissioner of at least 1 or 2 leagues. I always run my own football league every year, and then I've run this one for a number of years. So I a lot of things you're saying, I'm like, oh, I feel that. I feel that same sort of that you're feeling where you're like, God, just stay your freaking lineups. This isn't come on. What's the point? Yeah. What are you doing? Just do something.
Exactly. If I notice you haven't set your lineup that many times throughout the year, I'll send warnings. I'll let you, hey man, try to do a better job this week. You had 2 guys on bye this week in your lineup, so try. But for leagues that are more competitive, that have a higher buy-in, I have to, I've had to take away draft picks the next year. For one guy, I remember the worst thing. He just kept tanking. He didn't care. So I said, yeah, man, look, your picks are going to be high next year. You know what I'm going to do? If you're still in my league next year, I'm going to give you a kicker in the 2nd round. Have fun with that. And he got pissed.
Oh yeah.
He said, hey, if you're gonna tank and you're gonna stick in my league, then next year in the 2nd round I'll give you a kicker, which you don't do. You don't draft a kicker in a rookie draft. You would never do that. So unless you're the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Oh man, that's cool.
That one kid.
I have a new level of respect for you now that I'm aware of how much experience you have commissioning, and I think it's really cool. There's a lot of stuff you have.
I wouldn't say it's respect, man. You should just acknowledge that I'm a degenerate. I don't know about that,
No,
man.
no. There's
Just
sometimes
call it
I'm
like
like,
what it is.
I want to put that on a fantasy commish on my resume because like, we do legitimate work. Like we got to manage people. We have to manage expectations. We've got to, make decisions that people don't like and they're upsetting. And we have to create, me and Blake put a lot of work into make sure that like we create when we, say, we're very careful with our words when we say things. We're very careful about, making sure there's really no loopholes for things. And that takes work and that takes, thought and work and managing of people. And you can never can make everybody happy, which is the downside, but you do the best you can to kind of,
Yeah, it's frustrating. You can't make everyone happy. That's definitely true. I have tried. It's so hard. Everyone, inevitably, someone is going to feel like they get screwed throughout this season. So, what can you do?
yeah, even I did that. I remember one year my brother, I don't know why I'd let, even, this is just dumb. So I let my brother be commissioner one year of our fantasy league. And when it comes to me and my brother in fantasy, it just doesn't, he knows how to push my buttons with fantasy. And he knows what really unnerves me to the point where I'm like, this isn't funny anymore. Like, I'm going to fight you. And so he was pulling all sorts of crap and giving me crap
What
all
do
the
you do?
time.
What do
And
you do?
I can't even it's not even like, I can't remember specific things, but he'd come home and be like, oh, I'm going to make this rule and I'm going to do this. And I'd just be like, and I would be like, Nathan, stop. Like, I'm getting really upset. He did the thing he always did. Our childhood is basically my brother would mentally antagonize me until I attacked him. That's just our whole childhood. All of our fights were like, he would just harass me until I broke and I would go after him physically. And then of course I'd blame it on him and then, he'd get in trouble. But, uh, so he did the same thing as commissioner. And I've never done this in any league ever. And I've been playing fantasy for God, since I was 12 years. I dropped my whole team. I was so upset and so frustrated with his commissioning and all the crap he was doing. I just dropped my entire team and I said, I'm done with this. I think it's the only time I've ever missed the playoffs, potentially, ever, in as far as in our fantasy basketball league. Yeah, I couldn't handle it. So
Man, you are in the
I've been
playoffs
on both
every
sides.
year.
I've been the guy that's upset, and I've been the guy that's the commissioner, and also like dealing with the guy who's upset. And so that's why I try to understand. I try to hear them out the best I can. And obviously, there's sometimes where you don't necessarily come to an agreement where you can really, you're like, hey, this is just the way I do things, and some people, that's just, they don't want to do it that way, and that's just okay. I don't know what else to do. Famously, me and my friend Troy we are he's been the commissioner of some leagues that I've been in, and vice versa. And we're not in each other's leagues anymore because he was someone who
What
was like
happened?
so opposite of me, especially with the trade scenarios, where he would let what I thought were just the worst trades through in the world. And he's like, no, I'm letting every trade through. I don't care. And I'm like, you have to have a line. You have to have some line.
There
Like
is a line, yeah.
there's always
There
a
is a line.
line. And I think it's idealistic but not realistic to assume that I just let any trade through. And like, no, there's always a line somewhere, and everyone
Mhm.
draws it differently. And that's where we get into all of our different arguments, because we all like think, no, this is over the line, but someone's like, no, that's fine, that's not over the line. And it's like, you can never really nail down because it's so subjective. It's so
Yeah,
um,
for sure.
so it's like that one thing that you can never nail down. So you just try to like manage it the best you can and create like a system in which at least majority of the people find it fair and find it fun, and they can live with sort of the discrepancies and the subjectivity of the trade. So I totally
You
understand from
just
both perspectives. It's rough.
you just mentioned the most important thing. You're supposed to have fun, right? This is a hobby. So the second that I feel like that my commissioner style is being too, um, I don't know, autocratic or uh, authoritarian or whatever, I have to dial it back. I have to be like, okay, I don't want to be Kim Jong Un. I want to be chill. I want to be, I want everyone to have fun. I don't want to veto everything. I don't want to, tell everyone how bad they are, because I think a lot of my owners in my leagues, they have a respect for me. They know that I've done fantasy for a long time. They know that I know my football. People ask me for trades in other leagues all the time. They ask for me for lineup advice and trade advice all the time because they respect my opinion, which is cool. And I think that's good to have as a commissioner. I think the commissioner has to kind of be a know-it-all. You have to be someone who, can hold his end in an argument and present facts and give you good arguments as to why something is the way it is. I think your track record in fantasy speaks to it because, dude, I've never seen you lose. Your teams are always good. So I commend you. You're one of the best fantasy basketball players I've ever seen. And I've been playing for over, I don't know. I was playing basketball a few years after I checked out football. And I was never really into basketball as much as football. I always thought fantasy football was more of my thing, but I always enjoyed fantasy basketball. And man, I have to say, you are consistently successful. So kudos to you. And I think that is a good benchmark for being a commissioner. You have to kind of be a know-it-all. Maybe not – you don't want to come off as arrogant, but you have to know your shit. Oh, God, sorry. You have to know your stuff.
All good.
My bad. See, I curse like a sailor, man. I'm sorry.
They did a good job.
Okay, yeah.
So
yeah, maybe let's talk about the Jokic trade. Yeah,
I knew you were going to come back to that. It was in the back of my mind, like, I know we're going to come back to this at some point.